You are now listening to the Fighting Back Podcast, and here's your host, Jessica Travis.
Welcome to the Fighting Back Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Travis, and I have such an interesting guest here with me today. I have Don Price. Now, you are an Orlando native, and you have been the Sexton of Orlando for 31 years. Is that right?
That is correct.
So before we get into all of the fun history of Orlando, can you tell me a little bit about what a sexton is? What did you do for 31 years?
A sexton is, by definition, the person that controls the burials in a community. So, what we did in Orlando's unique. It only has one cemetery.
That's right, Greenwood Cemetery.
Greenwood Cemetery is the only cemetery within the city limits of Orlando. So I was lucky enough to be able to oversee the burials and the history of the people that were in Orlando. And, we have mayors that were buried there. We have business owners. We have everything. And so it was a fun job just to learn the history of the people.
That is so interesting. And I know you've got a lot of stories because as you were doing this job, you were learning about people, you were learning about their families. And then I think from what you've told me, people were telling you stories and history and everything as well, right? You got some good stories.
What's fun is no one could tell a story about you better than your own family. All right. I can tell you what's written. But then when your family pulls me aside and goes, let me really tell you about Jessica. Let me tell you what she did and what this did. And so it made it fun because your family is the only one that can really tell you about you.
Oh, I love this so much. Well, we are a legal podcast, so I want to talk about some stories about Orlando and Orlando history that are legal related.
Okay.
So the first one I want to talk about, because we do criminal defense and the criminal law is really near and dear to my heart. Do you know anything about, and I know you do, but I'm asking just to say, do you know anything about the first DNA trial in Orlando?
Yes. The first DNA trial was Tommy Lee Andrews. And he was on trial for rape.
Okay.
What it was. And Jeff Ashton, who we know is a judge of criminal defense and so on, but when he was in his young years, actually read a story about how they were using DNA in England.
He read a story about
He read a story.
Okay.
And
because at this time, let me just make sure that we understand, when was this going on?
We're talking the 80s.
Okay. And DNA was not used.
No, it was never used.
Anywhere in the United States.
Never used. So he read this story about what was happening in England. And then he read also this story about how tracing your DNA with children.
Okay.
And so, he saw this ad about how you could trace this and that. So he decided...
Which, now we think of it and we're like, yeah, duh, of course, Ancestry.com and all the other things. But back in the 80s...
Back in the 80s, you need a huge swab. Now we just need, minuscule is all we need. But he was the first person in the U.S. to convict someone over DNA evidence. And so it was very cool that just right down the street, we were the first people to ever use DNA evidence. And now DNA is used everywhere.
And so here in Orlando, we were the first ones in the entire United States?
Entire United States.
That is pretty cool.
And actually got a conviction over the DNA evidence.
That is pretty cool. So you said the name Jeff Ashton, and I think he would be considered a local celebrity here in town. I think a lot of people have heard his name. He was at the state attorney's office for a while.
Right.
And while he was there, I believe there was this one case in particular that some people may have heard about that he prosecuted. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Would be the Casey Anthony.
That would be the one.
Casey Anthony was on trial here in Orlando.
Yes.
There was a lot of controversy back and forth with the trial. But yes, so Jeff Ashton went from the first person to ever convict anybody on DNA and went through a lot of different changes through, the attorney's office and so on. But yes, he was the lead attorney, one of the lead attorneys on the Casey Anthony case.
Very nice. And I know with that one, it was a pretty intense public trial because there was jury sequestration and there was a whole thing about where the jurors were going to be and housed and kept. So do you know a little bit about that?
Yeah, I with a lot of the with the juries being sequestered and so on, it almost kind of brings us back to almost a Ted Bundy case.
Okay.
Where, Ted Bundy was a mass murderer, we all know from Florida State and everything else. He was tried right here in Orlando.
Well, you know what I want to talk about, because I know a lot of people know about Ted Bundy, but we might have some younger people in the audience who have not heard of him before. So can you give me a little backstory about Ted Bundy?
Yeah, Ted Bundy was a good-looking man. And he would make himself seem injured.
Okay.
Is what he would do. And, he would wear a fake cast or he would wear something. And what would happen is he would get young ladies, college-age ladies, and have them help. And in return, he would either drug them or do anything to get them into his infamous Volkswagen.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody jumps into a Volkswagen these days. And he was known for being one of Florida's biggest mass murderers or serial killers. But
so note to self, do not help an attractive injured man
in a Volkswagen
looking for help.
No. If they got a mask and they're in a yellow VW, just keep walking. But his trial was done here in Orlando.
So I thought that a lot of his victims and a lot of the crimes took place in Tallahassee.
Yes.
At the college up there.
Yes.
So why would his trial be here in Orlando? How did that happen?
I only could believe that Orlando was not part of they didn't have the knowledge. They didn't have a lot of what's going on because there was, in Tallahassee, it's a college town. It's everything town. So you brought him here to Orlando and he did his trial here.
So in the legal world, a lot of times one of the parties, state attorney or the defense attorney, will ask that the trial be removed to a different county because of the notoriety, the popularity, the fact that they don't believe that they can get an unbiased jury pool who don't know anything about the case.
Correct.
So they'll oftentimes move it from one part of the state to the other in order to find a part of the state where no one knows about the case and they can find themselves a jury pool that potentially unbiased.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it got moved from Tallahassee down to Orlando.
Down to Orlando.
And I want to wrap that in with the Casey Anthony as well, because I know that there were a lot of motions before the trial and a lot of conversations as to whether that trial would be moved from Orlando to a different county.
Correct.
And I think the court ultimately held that the defendant, Casey Anthony, would get a fair trial even if it was held here in Orange County, and we would be able to find jurors who did not know anything about the case or could be unbiased to try the case. So that's why it wasn't moved, even though I know that there was a lot of discussion about it being moved prior to trial.
Correct. And, the beauty of it is, you had Ted Bundy was here, people were sequestered. And, what's funny is not a real known fact, but a fun fact is they were sequestered to the Hartley Hotel, which is still here. It's right across from Lake Eola. Now it's a condo.
Okay.
And the Hartley Hotel was owned by Leona Helmsley, the Queen of Mean.
Okay. Wow.
As you know, so everybody that was on the trial was sequestered right here across from Lake Eola.
And so she had property here as well as all of the other cities.
Correct. And so
wow.
after all that happened, you know, she came out as being the Queen of Mean and how she did this and how she, but everybody was sequestered right there.
Wow. And for the Ted Bundy trial, isn't it true that the trial actually took place in the old courthouse, not what we think of as the courthouse today? Talk to me a little bit about that. Talk to me about the courthouse, where it was before, and the change that took place.
The old courthouse, you know, we used to love to call it it was aqua blue. You know, it was actually right down the street from where we're sitting. But there was some really...
And just for people who don't know where we're sitting right now, the courthouse is on Central and Wall Street, correct? What's now the History Center?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. There was an annex that held a lot of it, and part of that annex now, or the annex is torn down.
Okay.
Is what it is. But one of the major things that happened in the annex was the Thomas Provenzano case. Thomas Provenzano was a loner. He just wanted to come to court. He was going to be late. He called a couple people, didn't get any answers. So that day he showed up at the old courthouse and shot it up.
Okay.
And he killed...
So let me ask you a question, though. How was he able to get through security and everything with a gun?
There was no security.
What?
No. This is what brought security to courthouses. And this is what brought metal detectors. And this is what brought... He walked in with a couple shotguns and a couple things for revenge.
So people could just walk into the courthouse like they're walking into Publix.
And this is the 80s. This is we're not going far back. This is the 80s. And he walked in and killed one of the bailiffs, injured another, and then one of the corrections officer, he shot him as he was trying to shield just a citizen. But there was no security at the courthouses at this time. And, you know, he was put to death, and he was actually one of the first that did lethal injection.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he actually decided, or as part of his final, was that he was going to die like Jesus Christ, that he felt that way. But he came in just to set that. And so all that we see today with the metal detectors and everything going into a courthouse was because of Thomas Provenzano.
I
see. So it's kind of neat that here in Orlando we've had all these unique things that are now national.
So before Thomas Provenzano, was there security in anywhere else in the country, or none of the courthouses had security?
None of the courthouse. You used to be able to walk into the courthouse.
And because of him, now all of the courthouses have security.
All of the courthouses. And it was kind of because of his, where, he went down and killed Wilkerson and you have people that were injured and died later. One of the bailiffs died 10, 15 years later. I know Mark Parker died in his 40s, and he was just 19 years old.
Wow.
He was a corrections officer. They didn't hold guns then. And so everything just went around. So we have all these neat things that happened just because of Orlando.
Yeah. And now even the federal courthouse, you can, I don't know if you're allowed to bring a cell phone in, but I know for a while we weren't even allowed to bring cell phones into the federal courthouse. The security was that strict.
Because of the filming.
Right.
And everything that went on in the federal courthouse. So, we have these really neat laws that started here.
Right.
Only because of our riffraff, as you want to call it.
Yeah.
You've got, all of this. And, also another thing that happened right down the street, Lou Pearlman.
Speaking of the federal courthouse.
Yes, Lou Pearlman.
So talk to me about Lou Pearlman. What was happening there?
With Transcontinental, Lou Pearlman actually got his claim to fame, or he got all, he was the founder of NSYNC. He was the founder of O-Town. He was the founder of Backstreet Boys. He was founder of all that. But what got him his claim to fame, as a lot of people don't realize, he was Art Garfunkel's cousin.
Of the Simon and Garfunkel.
Yes.
Okay, I did not know that.
He was Art Garfunkel's cousin.
Wow.
So that got him.
It's a small world.
So that got him into a lot of doors.
Right.
That he did.
In the music industry.
Industry. And so all these bands that he started that especially like NSYNC. NSYNC had, 5 members?
Correct. Yep.
He was number 6.
That's right. All of the contracts.
He was number 6.
Right.
So he actually got a cut of everything they did as a magical 6 cents.
And wasn't that the main thing that got him in trouble for the Ponzi scheme?
Yes.
And that's what ultimately landed him in prison?
Well, yeah. Well, he had Transcontinental Airways.
Right.
Never happened. He owned Church Street Station.
That's right.
Down the road, Transcontinental. He owned all of this stuff, and it was all magical. It never existed. He never owned an airline. He never owned any of that.
Transcontinental Airlines didn't exist?
No.
Oh.
No.
That's
NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys.
They existed.
They did, but they flew Delta. And so all of this stuff that he was doing, and he was taking people's retirement, and he was taking all of this, and he
took my money for a concert ticket, I'll tell you.
Yeah, he took everybody's money, but it's amazing that here we are in Orlando, people look at Church Street Station, and that was Transcontinental at one time.
Right.
He bought it. And you would go in, he had a recording studio there. He had all that. He had all these bands.
Here in Orlando.
Wow. That he started, but he was part of them. He would sign himself as a 6th member or a 3rd member or any of that. And so he was getting a lot. And like NSYNC, he owned the name.
Right.
So all of a sudden, when everything started going down, they found out that here he was, a member of the band, getting a cut, and they didn't even own the name.
Wow. And that was the federal trial that happened right here
at the federal courthouse.
The federal courthouse in Orlando. Very cool. It is so amazing to see how we think of Orlando, at least I think of Orlando as a small town.
Right.
Or a smaller town.
But
it is really cool to see all of the things that have happened in Orlando that have shaped the legal and cultural landscape of the rest of the United States, from the DNA to the courthouse security to the boy band.
Right.
Bonanza of the early 2000s.
We have history. The problem that Orlando faces is we're transient.
Right. We have a lot of tourists.
We have a lot of tourists. We have a lot of people that weren't born here.
That is true.
We have a lot of people that
People
weren't.
love the warm weather and love to come here.
So they come here, but they don't know the history. It's not like a Philadelphia or somewhere up north where you've got 3 generations and 4 generations. And, I recently went up to the Carolinas. My father passed away, and went up there, and I stood at the gravesite of my 5th great-grandfather.
Wow.
And, so I'm standing there. I've got my 5th great, my 4th great, my 3rd great. But you don't have that in Orlando. You just don't have it. Although we were born here, we don't have that back history.
Right.
We don't, we can't tell you that, the Beecham used to be this, and we can't tell you that,
the horse and buggies used to sit over there.
Yeah, we don't have that. We can't, and as we're looking at photos and we're looking at this, you can't say my grandfather was there.
Right.
And you can't say, oh, this is, so that's the, the difference of Orlando than, a major city. And so we're new.
Right.
And, we have some fun facts about Orlando, according to, where the first duplex was built and where the first this was done and where this was done. But you don't get to see it because a lot of people never witnessed it. And that's the neat thing about Orlando.
So, Don, if this podcast has gotten people really interested in the history of Orlando and they want to go out there and get more information, where do you think people should start if they'd like to look into some more history of Orlando?
The History Center.
Okay.
It's good.
Yep.
The History Center is really good. But of course, they only have, exhibits that, are part of the time. Like, for example, you walk in and you might see the gorilla from Showbiz Pizza up there. Showbiz Pizza was Orlando based.
Yeah.
And you've got singers and all that did the voices and all that are still here. Disney, when it came in the 70s, people are still around today.
Right.
That built Disney and can tell you. And that's the beauty of a lot of the stories, is that, they would come up and they would go, hey, let me tell you. And, one of the attorneys in town, he was one of them that prosecuted Lou Pearlman, and he's got 2 sons that were in the NFL. He owned a fish house down the road, and those kind of people are the ones that you talk to, and they're the ones that tell you, all right, let me tell you the true story. And I'm good friends with Delta Burke, and she can tell you more stories about Orlando. She grew up here. She was Miss Florida at 16. Actually, she doesn't live too far from here now. And you can actually just sit down and hear the stories.
So I think what you're saying is, to get more information about the history of Orlando, sit down with an older Orlando native and ask him some questions.
Ask, as my grandfather said, and it might not be a great thing, sit and spit.
Okay.
You just sit down.
I like it.
And you talk, and you learn the history just by talking to people. They're the ones that are going to books won't help you. Books are, they're written in a way. I've read more books. Actually, one of the best books that I ever have is called His Honor.
Okay.
And it's Hizzoner.
Okay.
His Honor. It was written by Samuel Rowan, our co-authored, but it was the autobiography of Mayor Langford. If you read that book today, Mayor Langford would be out of office tomorrow. But it's his truth. It's what he did, and it's what everything happened, and all the deals they made over at a firehouse, and all the deals they made at a gun camp, and all the deals that's how you learn the history. You learn it by talking.
Well, Don, I really thank you for
You're welcome.
Hanging out with me today so we can do some sitting and spitting.
Sitting and spitting.
And thank you for answering my questions and giving me a little bit of insight into Orlando history.
Welcome.
I learned a lot, and this was a lot of fun.
Anytime you want to talk, let me know.
Thank you so much for joining us.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this episode helpful or informative, don't forget to follow us on social media and share this podcast with your friends. Like, follow, subscribe so you never miss a show, and help others know their rights by spreading the word. Your support helps us keep fighting back. The information provided in the Fighting Back podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended as legal advice. Every case is unique and should be reviewed by a qualified attorney who can provide guidance based on the specific facts and circumstances of your case. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship with Fighter Law or any of its attorneys. If you are facing any legal issue, we strongly encourage you to consult with a licensed attorney directly.